was getting into the late hours of night. Although activity was now happening during the day as well, the daytime hours somehow made things less frightening, as they always do. At least I could see into what would later become the darkest shadows, and the light brought in some sense of comfort and hope. As soon as you heard those crickets start chirping, you knew night time was upon you and all hope was lost. To make matters even worse, it began to rain outside this night. The sound of raindrops clashing against the windows was only drowned out by the loud, thunderous crash created by the lightning that briefly lit up the home every minute or so. It was coming down now harder than I had even ever seen it rain since we moved out here. It was almost like it was a foreboding sign from God, or even the devil. Here, take this with you, Irv said, extending his hand out, balled into a fist. I placed my hand under his, and he dropped a small vial in my hand. Holy water. You might need it, and let's hope to God we don't, he said. Irv was the more sensible and empathetic of the two. He brought a down-to-earth dynamic to the duo, whereas Tom was more of your Rambo. You would run into guns blazing. This honestly made them a great team. They balanced one another out and trusted each other. I took the vial and placed it into my front pocket. Thank you, I said, while nodding my head to demonstrate my appreciation. So I think you know where you gotta go tonight, Tom said, while putting a battery back in the back of his cameras. We're not going up there again. You could see the fear running through Irv's veins. He came here to get evidence. We came here to get evidence, and up there is where we are going to get it. We're going to have to go back up there, and I brought a little something to help us out. Tom pulled out 2 candles from a bag. What the hell do you plan on doing with those? They say he doesn't like candles, so what is he going to do when we sit in a circle of them? No, that's a horrible idea. We're not doing some sort of ritual up there. Look, it's not a ritual. We're simply sitting in a candle-lit circle while trying to collect evidence up in the attic. No big deal. Right, no big deal. Tom had a somewhat evil smirk on his face. He knew that Irv didn't want to go up there, and he really upped the ante by pulling out the candles. I felt bad for Irv. Let's go, Tom said, dropping the candles back into the bag and slinging it over his shoulder. Tom quickly started for the stairs as Irv and I were still standing in the living room. We made eye contact. He had a look of horror on his face. I didn't want to go up there either, however, I knew that we couldn't let Tom be up there all alone. It'll be alright, I said, while placing my hand on Irv's shoulder. We're going to go up there for a little bit, then we'll leave. Well, we won't be up there all long. We need to stick it together. I couldn't believe what I was saying. I really wanted to just burn the entire house down and call it a night. I was more so afraid of thinking about what Tom would do if we were up here alone, if he were up here alone. Irv was the one who kept him grounded and from going too far. If we were to be up there by himself, if he were to be up there by himself, there's no telling what would happen. Fine, but 10 minutes and we're out, Irv replied. Trust me, that's 10 minutes longer than I want to be up there too, but we have to do this. Hey, bring up the ghost box when you come, Tom shouted from upstairs. marching off to our deaths. As we reached the top stair, my stomach dropped. There in the attic was Tom sitting, the center of 6 candles that were lit and placed in a circle. I don't like this. Irv couldn't hide the fear and discontent in his voice. We're fine. Come in. Drop the ghost box in the center. We stepped into the attic, the wood floor creaking loudly with every step. We walked into the circle and sat down on the floor. Irv turned the ghost box on and sat in the middle. The sound of the static echoed and bounced off the wooden floor and walls. This was the most fear that I had felt in quite some time. The anticipation of what would happen fueled my anxiety as sweat dripped down my forehead and my heart began to race. Is anybody here with us? Tom asked. Here, said a voice. You're dead, another said. After that, you're dead. We're dead. We're all dead. Why are we dead? I'm pretty sure that you are the ones that are dead, Tom said. This is exactly what Irv and I were afraid of. Typically, Irv would stop Tom from provoking when he felt like he was going too far into the darkness, seeming to try to ignore everything going on around him. Sam is dead. I'm going to kill you. How many of you are here? Tom asked. Many. We are a legion. There were so many different voices coming across as if hard to tell how many there were, or if I had heard the voice before. Although I knew whatever was here wanted me dead. Hearing it say that in its own voice sent shocks through my body. What are your names? Tom was getting more and more excited with every response. It was as if he were incapable of feeling fear. Abaddon, El Diablo, Satan, each voice grew creepier than the last. How about you show us a sign of your presence? As I sat there in the dark, all I could think of was shut the hell up, Tom. I was hoping and praying that nothing would happen, and if anything did, it wouldn't be to me. Then there was suddenly a large crash from the basement. It sounded like a Civil War cannon being shot off. This sound brought shockwaves through the house, so powerful that the attic floor shook. Was that in the basement? Who was that? Satan, a voice said. Satan did that. If that was Satan, he's not. He's a lot weaker than I thought. Tom paused and laughed. I don't know what had gotten into him, but he had become an absolute madman. Kill you, said a voice. Kill me. You can't even do anything up here to show us you're here with us. You're not as powerful as you say. Basement, another voice said. You want us to go into the basement? I'll tell you what. You do something up here and we will go down into the basement, but we're not going to leave until you do. Tom crossed his arms and sat there with a smug look on his face. My heart was absolutely racing. I was avoiding looking at her because I knew he felt the same, and seeing him freak out wouldn't be far from comforting. Would be far from comforting. Really, nothing. The attic grew even colder. There was a foul odor taking it over. Suddenly, all at once, every candle went out. We sat in silence for a moment in complete darkness. As our eyes adjusted, I wanted to run. I know Irv did too, but we were frozen in fear. There were loud footsteps going down the stairs. We all slowly got up and stepped out of the attic to go see who or what was moving down the stairs. There was nothing Sure enough, we got it. The video showed a completely empty downstairs, and suddenly every room was lit up with a bright flash. What is that? I asked. Something powerful, very powerful. We have seen flashes of light before, but nothing so powerful to light up an entire house. This is huge. We got it, Tom said. For a short moment, his excitement wore off on us, and the fear had subsided. You know what that means? Irv and I stood there in silence, afraid of what he might say next. We have to go into the basement now. I don't think that's we have to go. We told them we would if they did something, and they did. We can't break a deal with the devil, Tom interjected, cutting Irv off. All right, we'll go down there. But after that, we are done for the night, and we are calling Father Schaffer and telling him we have enough evidence, Irv said, trying to be a voice of reason. Let's go, Tom said, before jogging off towards the kitchen. It was like watching a kid walking into the front gates of Disney World, and we were the parents dreading it. We got this, I said, while extending my fist out towards Irv's for him to hit. We got this. Chapter 13. Chapter 13. The air in the home grew thick. Walking towards the basement stairs felt as if I was swimming through the ocean. It was dark, cold, and lonely feeling had overtaken me, but I didn't feel any fear. After all that happened, I was defeated and deflated. There was no energy left to be afraid. This was our first real visit to the basement. Our real first visit. I somehow knew that this was going to be a final stand. I didn't know what to do or how to feel. At the end of this, I would finally have some sort of closure. Whether good or bad, there would be closure. I found comfort and strength in this, which was what kept me pressing onward towards those stairs. The door was already open. I stepped onto the stairs to see Tom standing halfway down there waiting on us. Irv followed behind me as soon as he stepped onto the top of the step. The door creaked, flowed close. The door creaked closed, followed by a loud slam. The loud slam caused us to all jump. Maybe I still had a little fear in my system. Jeez, dude, Tom said. I didn't do that. I didn't even touch the door, Irv replied. Tom looked back at him with an angry look on his face and quickly turned around to continue down the stairs. Let's go, he said. The basement was pitch black. I used my hand against the concrete wall to keep my balance on the old wooden stairs. We finally made it to the bottom and stepped into the large room at the end of the hall. So this is where they supposedly used to make the moonshine. Are the man and woman who used to make the moonshine down here, Tom said. There was no response. Is there anybody down here, Tom said. Suddenly there was a loud bang that sounded like a cannonball being dropped on the ground above us. So we're still playing games, huh? Your friend tells us to come downstairs and you stay silent while he starts playing around upstairs. Are you really that big of a coward? Too afraid to come out and speak with us? Why don't you show yourself? I looked back at Irv and he was visibly shaken by one of the walls nearest the hall. Tom was now standing in the center of the room, and I could tell he was getting aggravated, almost as if something had gotten into him. Why don't you make a noise? Throw something. Do something. We stood in silence for a few seconds. Then we heard a faint noise coming in front of us. Do you hear that? Tom asked. What the hell is that? We all stood there still, looking around the room, trying to pinpoint the sound. Look, it's the door handle. It's jiggling. Tom explained. Get up here. Get this on video. We watched in awe as the doorknob and the door of the moonshine room moved violently. Irv was still standing in the back of the room, almost afraid to move. Is that all you've got? You only can jiggle and doorknob. You're obviously not only a coward, you're weak. You are no demon. You're nothing more than a weak old man who's trying to scare us, but it's going to have to take a lot more than that. The room completely changed. I don't know how to explain it, other than it was bad. It felt like he lit a powder keg, and we were just standing here waiting for it to go off. Come on, open the door. If you're all the big and mighty like you and your buddy up there claim, that should be no problem. Suddenly, I heard a whimper come from behind me, almost like the sound a dog makes when it gets stepped on, followed by a loud thud. Holy shit, I yelled. Tom quickly turned around and had a smile on his face. Irv was against the concrete wall, a good 3 feet off the ground, suspended by some unseen force. He was kicking and trying to gasp for breath. I did not know what to do, so I just stood there completely frozen, watching in horror as he continued to struggle. The camera he was holding fell from his hand and bounced off the concrete ground with a loud crack sound. This was it. I was about to watch a man die right in front of me, right before my eyes, and I couldn't do anything about it. The police would never believe or buy our story, even though we would show them the evidence in the video. I wanted to move, scream, do something, anything at all, but I was frozen and completely helpless. I watched as Irv's eyes began to fade away before he was dropped into the ground with a giant thud. There he sat with his back propped up against the wall, eyes still closed. Finally, I broke free and from whatever was holding me back and was able to move again. I ran over to Irv and began gently slapping his face. Wake up, please, God, wake up, I shouted. Tom then slowly started approaching from behind me. He had a shocked, blank look on his face. Wake the hell up! Irv's eyes slowly opened. He sat there for a second with a confused look on his face. Out of nowhere, he pushed me aside and ran up the stairs. I looked back at Tom, and he was still standing there with a shocked look on his face. I quickly ran up the stairs, only to see the front door open and a figure huddled over on the porch. I ran out towards the figure. Tom had yet to even come up the stairs. I reached the porch and saw a large pool of blood on the ground. You alright? I asked stupidly. I'm puking up blood. Does it seem like I'm alright? He shouted, looking back at me, gasping for air. Irv was usually a quiet, reserved guy, so I was shocked to hear him address me in such a manner, but honestly, I could not blame him. I sat there with him for the next 20 minutes as he continued to cough up and puke blood. Tom came out momentarily and looked at her before turning around and going back into the home without saying a word. Whatever is in the basement, it's powerful, more powerful than the devil, Irv said while he was still huddled over to breathe. We can't stay here. I can't stay here. I wish you the best, but I'm sorry. I cannot help anymore. I hung my head. I knew this was coming, and I knew it was for the best. At least the best for him. I selfishly just wished that they would stay for a few more nights, especially after what had happened tonight. I was terrified to think about being alone in this house. Irv got up and walked back inside the home. I sat down on the porch with my head in my hands. Once again, completely defeated and fearful for what was to come. There was no way I could survive another night here alone. And who knew how long I could be stuck there until someone came back to help. Depression began to sink in. I started wondering if things would have been better off if I did take my life that night in the bathroom, if I had shot myself. All the pain would be gone. My family would not be left worrying about me, and I hate to think about it, they could move on with their lives too. Maybe it wasn't too late. God. I was the one up against the wall being choked to death. I could have died down there, and you don't give a damn. All you care about is getting your good footage to try to boost your career. I'm done. I'm leaving, Irv said while throwing gear into a duffel bag. Okay, look. We can't leave tonight. It's way too late. We both are tired, and we can't leave him here alone after we start things up. We have a responsibility to stay at least the night. Irv looked over to me, and we made brief eye contact. I could feel tears forming in my eyes as though the thought of being left here alone tonight. I must have looked like a sad puppy because Irv just sighed and nodded his head. Fine, we will leave tomorrow, but I am picking up all the gear now so we can leave in the morning. Okay, but let's leave the DVR cameras running and keep one camera handy in case something happens. Fine. But I'm not going back down there. Irv was trembling. I wasn't sure if it was out of anger, fear, or both. You don't have to go back down there. I would really like you to, but I'm not going to force you. We just keep the cameras to document our last night here. If we have to stay the night, there's no sense in missing out on any possible evidence. All we will have to back up with will be the DVR cameras in the morning, and we can leave. Tom replied. All right, but I swear to God that if you try to make me stay another night, I will take the van and leave you behind. I am not staying here any longer than tomorrow morning. That's it. As I watched this fight continue, I couldn't help but shed a few tears. When they came in, the relationship was playful and strong. In that moment, they were at each other's throats, willing to leave one another behind. I couldn't help but think about my wife, and how we went through the exact same stages. This place is a way of turning people against one another and driving them to their wits' end. Irv eventually gave up and began loading equipment into the van while Tom sat down at the table. So, what do you think this all is? I asked Tom as he sat at the table with his head in his hands. He was visibly stressed and exhausted. His eyes were bloodshot, and he had a pale complexion. What do you mean? He replied with looking up. How is it that we were both drawn here? Me, with the history of Jody's family. You with your history with the demon. I mean, there has to be a reason why we're here. I don't know. Divine intervention. A curse. Who's to say? A curse. I couldn't help but laugh. First ghosts, God, and demons. Now you want me to believe that curses are real. You just saw a man thrown and held up against a wall and an invisible force while he almost choked to death, and you're questioning the existence of curses. He had a good point. I just thought those were all movies and childish stories. Curses are actually real. Let me ask you a question. What I think I already know the answer to. Have you ever read the Bible? I shook my head. See, that's the thing. Not many people actually have. Sure, there's a lot of people who read verses at church with the preachers, or can rattle off some popular verses, but not many people have actually read it. If people actually read the Bible, there wouldn't be so many doubters out there. I always find it funny when people say that ghosts are not real, but then go to church on Sunday to learn about the Holy Spirit. He paused and laughed quietly under his breath. Curses, demonic possessions, voodoo, black magic, and of course, angels and demons. It's all in there. In fact, Jesus was the first exorcist. He exorcised the demon out of a man and put it straight into a pig, just to show it who's boss, I'm sure. But to answer your question, yes, curses are real. It's very possible that her family was cursed and doomed to spend their lives here. Now that doesn't explain why the entire land was cursed, nor why we're here. But who knows, in this field, one thing that you learn really quick is that you will always leave with far more questions than answers. It's frustrating, but it's what keeps you wanting to get back out there. I just owe a lot to you guys. Please, I don't know how I can repay you. I don't know what I would have done if you wouldn't have shown up, or if I would even still be here. You guys are honestly a gift from God. I didn't think you believed in that crap, Tom asked with a smirk on his face. I have to now. It's all I've got, I replied. I'm sorry that we are leaving you tomorrow, but we will get Father Schaffer on the phone first thing in the morning. There's just nothing else we can do. We have collected more than enough evidence for him to reach out to the church and ask for their help. Unfortunately, we are not exorcists, and after tonight... He paused and looked down towards the ground briefly before looking back up with a smile on his face and placing his hands on my shoulder. Look, if you need anything, you have our number. Call it any time of the day and night, and one of us will pick up. We might not be able to be here, but we may be able to guide you through some things. Or if you just have any questions, we may be leaving, but we will still be here for you. The sincerity in his voice choked me up. I've never heard such words spoken in such a heartfelt and truthful tone. Since Jody left, I hadn't heard anyone tell me that they cared about me or even insinuate that they did. I meant, and it meant the world to me. Thank you, I said, with a smile on my face and tears forming in my eyes. All right, I've got everything loaded up for now, Irv said as he emerged from the kitchen. Just have to pack up a few things in the morning and we're out of your right, he said with a stern face while looking over at Tom. Right, Tom said. I really wish we had some more of that moonshine. What are we going to do now, Irv asked. Well, I would say we could watch a movie or something, but, you know, the TV is kind of, I broke it. It's all good. We can just kick back and relax, Tom said reassuringly. Relax in this pace, Irv said in a shrill voice. Hey, look, tonight's just a normal home, alright? We're just going to take it easy, no talk about the paranormal or any of that. We need a break. Tonight, we simply relax. Relax. I was quite shocked at how Tom's tone had changed so quickly. Just a few minutes ago, he was antagonizing a demon who was trying to kill his best friend. One thing was for certain, Irv and I were not going to argue. So, Jody, how long have you guys been together? Tom asked. Oh man, I'm horrible with dates. It's been a while. I want to say somewhere between 10 and 15 years. Tom began to laugh. Typical guy response. We can never remember the important things, but I can tell you every lyric from every CD that I listened to since the 5th grade. Crazy how that stuff works, isn't it? Irv came in and sat down in a rocking chair opposite of us. It seemed as if he was coming down from his adrenaline high and was calming down. Yeah, Jody was always on me for that kind of stuff. I program our anniversary date in my phone so I get a reminder each year. Otherwise, I'd forget that too. Without my phone, I would be screwed. I hear that, Tom said. Someone is here, Irv said. While trying to peer out the window, I hear a car running outside. Who the hell would that be? I replied, my arm jumped out of my chest. For a second, I thought to myself, what if it's Jody? Although I knew logically that there was no way it was her, I still held on to the hope that one day soon I would see her and Charlie walk through the door with smiles on their faces and arms stretched wide, asking for a hug. I have no idea. I don't see any car out there, just our van, Irv said while now peering through his hands, trying to look out the window. Let's go check it out. Grab a camera just in case. I thought we weren't doing this paranormal crap tonight, Irv shouted. We're not. I'm not saying it's anything paranormal. It's obviously a car. Who knows though? It could be a robber thinking the home is vacant and I'm not something, someone starts shooting, that I'll be the meat shield for you. You got me, Tom replied with a smirk on his face. Tom stepped aside and walked out to the porch. There's nothing here. Wait. You've got to be shitting me. What is it? Tom asked. Our van. Irv took off running down the stairs, running towards the van. Hey, get the hell out of there. Turn the car off and get out now. Tom and I paused and looked at each other in confusion before running down the stairs after Irv. We saw him swing the driver's side door open and point his camera all around. As soon as we made it to the car, the engine revved up 3 times before shutting off. What the hell was that? Did you leave the van on? Tom asked. No, I didn't leave the van on. Well, you must have, because it obviously was running. I know that we didn't come out here and turn the van on. I did not leave the van running, and you know how I know. How? Tom asked sarcastically. Irv slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a key ring and shook it in the air. The keys clanged together and echoed across the field. As I looked over, Tom's mouth was wide open and he was completely frozen in his stance. So explain to me how the hell I left the fan on when the keys weren't even in the car, let alone in the ignition. Tom continued to stand there in complete silence as realization of what happened hit him and me like a ton of bricks. Also, how the hell did the engine rev with no one there to hit the gas? Irv slammed the door in frustration and walked past us into the house, slamming the side door behind him. Tom was still completely frozen, staring at the car. I quietly turned around and headed for the stairs. I walked with my head hung in utter defeat. We thought that for once we could have a peaceful night. Just one night of no mention of paranormal. No investigating, no equipment, just relaxation. However, instead, it seemed like the demons were stepping up their game. How does something turn a car on without even having the keys? I went up the stairs and opened the door. Now I just want to stop here and remind you that spirits, they need electricity or some form of energy. But a demon is self-powered. And he is very powerful. So Tom is realizing that what he's dealing with is not spirits. These are demons. I went up the stairs and opened the door. As I went to close it behind me while walking into the kitchen, the door stopped. I turned around and realized that Tom was right behind me. We both walked in to find her pouring himself a glass of water. Tom walked in and slowly shut the door behind him, and we all stood in the kitchen in silence as Irv drank his glass of water. We could have left earlier today, but no, Irv said, while slamming his empty glass into the kitchen sink. Please don't, Tom replied in a soft voice. Don't what? Speak the truth. We could be home right now, sleeping in our own beds, relaxing, but no, here we are with the ghost of Dale Earnhardt. We will be leaving in the morning, Tom replied in a still calm yet increasingly annoyed tone. You're damn right we will be. Irv stopped mid-sentence and looked towards the door. We all stood in silence as footsteps slowly walked up the wooden stairs, then to the door. None of us moved an inch. Slowly the door creaked open. My heart was beating in my chest. The door fully opened and the knob was resting against the wall. There was nobody standing on the other side. Tom began moving his head to the left and to the right, trying to peer around the corners of the door. After not being able to see anything, he began slowly walking towards the door. Wham! The door closed, grazing Tom's nose on the way. Why didn't you shut the door on your way in? Irv said sarcastically. Tom turned around, holding his nose with a completely defeated look on his face. I'm done, he said. Done what? Irv asked. I'm done with all of this, he replied, while walking out towards the living room. What do you mean you're done? Irv shouted from the kitchen. We're leaving tonight to get in here. Help me tear this shit down. Ah, so now that it hurt your nose, you want to leave? Forget me being strangled and thrown across the wall. You know, thousands of dollars of equipment was being violently tossed into large plastic totes. Cables were balled up and thrown into bags. What took them a couple of hours to set up only took them 20 minutes to tear down and throw into the back of the van. I followed them outside as they took their last tote to the van. Tom threw into the back, and Irv got into the passenger seat without even saying goodbye. Well, thanks for your help, I said while stretching out my hand for a handshake. Tom grabbed my hand. I'm sorry that we couldn't be more help. I wish you the best. He loosened his grip on my hand and he walked away, getting into the driver's seat before starting the van. Up and pulling away, they were gone, which meant I had to spend the rest of the night in here by myself, alone with whatever it was that they pissed off. I used to fear the idea of dying in this home, but at this point, I thought I'd rather die than spend another night alone in there. Maybe tonight would be the night that death finally came to set me free. Chapter 14. The night was quiet, too quiet. I lied on the couch staring at the ceiling all night, not able to sleep, just one bump or crash, yet there was none. The anticipation killed me and kept me up the entire night. It was all part of the plan. I was more broken than ever. All that I wanted the past couple of weeks was a night of peace and quiet, and once I had it, I was more frightened than the nights that were littered with creaks and bangs. What were they planning? I knew that they were still here, watching me, waiting to attack. The home was still cold, although the heat was on. The air was thick and smell of sulfur, although randomly wafted through the air. I watched the clock on my phone as 3 in the morning grew closer and closer and closer. I closed my eyes and began to fantasize. A car pulled into the driveway. I heard it on the gravel road. It stopped at the back of the house by the garage. I heard 2 doors open and slam shut, 2 sets of footsteps come up the wooden stairs leading to the side of the door as it suddenly swung open. Daddy! I heard a voice shriek from the kitchen. I looked over to see Charlie running towards me with her arms wide open. Before I could get up off the couch, she lunged herself over the armrest and landed on top of me. Temporarily knocking my wind out, she wrapped her arms around me as I held her tight and began to cry. Hi, baby, how are you? I said in between cries. What's wrong, Daddy? Nothing. I'm just so happy that you are here. I missed you. I missed you so much. I missed you too. So did Mommy. How have you been? I asked with the widest smile on my face that I ever had. I was filled with relief, happiness, and love. I've been okay. I've just missed you, and I thought about you every day. Every day. Every day. I pulled her even tighter and held her while my tears fell into the top of her head and disappeared in her long brown hair. Where's Mommy? I asked. Right here, he said. Right here, said a voice from behind me as a hand caressed my face. I opened my eyes and looked up to see Jody standing behind the couch with a smile on her face, looking over me. She looked like an angel here to save me from all my pain. This is the first time that I felt happy in over a month. I'd completely forgot what happiness felt like. I'm going to say hi to Mommy, I said while rubbing Charlie's back. She sat up on her knees and looked at me with a gleaming smile on her face, completely melting my heart. I stood up and walked to the back of the couch and pulled Jody into a bear hug as I began to cry again. I love you so much, and I'm sorry, so sorry for everything. Shh, she said. It's okay. What's important now is that we are here. I placed my hands on her hips and pulled her back to look into her eyes. We made eye contact just like the first time we met. I'd gotten completely lost in her eyes as my heart began to flutter. I loved you, I mouthed her before I pulled her in for a kiss. came over the room as I began to cough and gag. I turned back to look where Jody once was standing to see it standing there. The figure from the attic standing a good 2 to 3 feet taller than me. It was pitch black, no facial features or anything, just a dark black figure with a hat on its head. My heart went from fluttering in happiness to stopping briefly. I quickly opened my eyes to that I was still lying on the couch. It was all a fantasy, but it felt so real. My heart began pounding and I felt the need to look behind me where I was standing in the fantasy. I slowly turned my head to look. My heart began to beat faster as my eyes got closer to the back of the couch. I finally had my head turned around and stared at the back of the couch. I just looked up. I counted myself down mentally. 2, 3. No, 1. No, 3. Oh, shit. I just said to myself before darting my eyes above the back of the couch. There was nothing there. I grabbed my heart and let out a huge sigh of relief. I pulled out my phone and looked at the clock. It was 4 in the morning. I made it past 3. Since most of the worst and most horrifying things happened at 3, I knew I'd made it from home free. I lay back down and rested my hand back on the pillow. Shit, there it was, standing in front of me. Just like in the fantasy, the smell of sulfur filled the room as the large figure just stood there watching me. I couldn't catch my breath as I got a sharp pain in my chest. It was warning me, telling me what it was about to do. I rolled over onto the floor as my body tightened up and tears began to roll down my eyes. The pain was unbearable. This was it. I was going to die from a heart attack. On my living room floor, everything got dark as I slipped into unconsciousness. Chapter 15. The sound of music filled the living room. It was a familiar tone. I woke up from my position, sprawled out on the floor. I had a terrible, horrible headache, and I ran my head over my forehead. I felt dried blood. I looked over and saw the table sitting in front of me. I must have hit my head on the corner. The music continued to play, and I looked around as my eyes tried to adjust to the daylight shining through the windows. I pulled myself up off the ground and sat on the couch, still in a daze, trying to figure out what exactly happened last night and how long I was out for. Did I really have a heart attack? Was it all a dream? I was still unsure. I looked back to the table to see my phone sitting there lit up. Someone was calling. I picked up the phone and answered it. Hello? Hi, it's Father Schaffer. How are you doing this morning? What time is it? I asked, still confused as to everything around me. It's 8 in the morning. I'm sorry if I woke you. I know you had some long nights and must be exhausted. No, it's okay. Last night, it's just... Never mind. How can I help you, Father? I was too exhausted to even explain what had happened the night before, and honestly, I was still unsure as to what took place. Well, I talked to Irv and Tom this morning. They informed me that they had left. From what they told me, things are pretty bad out there, and I don't think we have time to wait in the church. I'm on my way to you right now. It should not be any more than an hour or so. We are going to have to try to handle this one on our own. Okay, I will be here, obviously. I said before hanging up the phone. There were so many things I wanted to say. So many things I wanted to ask. But I simply did not have the energy as my head continued to throb with pain. I got up and walked towards the master bedroom to get some painkillers from the medicine cabinet. As I passed by the couch, I felt something strange squish between my feet. I looked down and was absolutely horrified. What the hell is that dog crap? As if I wasn't already confused enough. I couldn't begin to comprehend where this had come from. It was too fresh. I started to try to hop on one leg towards the bathroom so that I wouldn't drag it through the house, and that's when I heard faint cries from the closet. It wasn't the cries of a human, rather some type of animal. Whatever had gone to the bathroom in the middle of the floor had been in the closet. I hobbled over to open the door and slowly opened it. As soon as I got it open enough to peek in, the door flung wide open His fierce growl sent shivers down my spine. A dog ran out of the room and I heard it running down the basement stairs. I quickly realized that wasn't an ordinary dog, for the basement door was shut tight and there was no way it could have gotten down there. Furthermore, that dog was familiar. It was Brutus. "You son of a bitch, you killed my dog and now you're going to torture me." I yelled. In my rage, I grabbed the door and completely ripped it off the hinges in one swift motion before throwing it into the middle of the living room. I wanted nothing more than go down to the basement and get my hands on whatever was down there, but I knew I couldn't. Instead, I halved my way to the bathroom, turning on the hot water to take a shower. While still hobbling on one leg, I managed to get my clothes off and into the shower without falling. The bathroom quickly filled with steam and hot water burned against my skin. It was so painful, I wanted to turn it down, but at the same note, the pain made me feel something. It made me feel alive. I reached for the bar of soap to wash myself when there was a sudden rattle in the pipes. The shower head turned 90 degrees and began shooting water at the wall. I turned the shower head back to its correct position, only to find that the water was freezing cold. It felt as if knives were penetrating my skin with each drop of water that splashed off my body. I gasped for air, trying to regain my breath as the frigid cold took all of the wind out of me. I wanted to jump out and wrap a towel, but it had set in my mind that I wasn't going to let them win this time. Shivering and in pain, I finished my shower 10 minutes later and dried it off with a towel before walking into the bedroom to find some clothes. I quickly got dressed in an old pair of jeans stained with oil and an unknown substance working on the car. I found a button-down flannel shirt. I figured that would make me somewhat presentable for me when Father arrived. Without Jody, I was a mess. I managed to clean all the dog mess off the floor and put on a pot of coffee before I heard the car pull into the driveway. I heard the footsteps walking up the stairs and towards the door, followed by 4 loud knocks. I walked to the door and took a deep breath. Taking a second to put a smile on my face, I knew I looked like hell, but I wanted to give off a good impression after he had driven all this way. I swung open the door to see him standing there with his briefcase in one hand. He instantly extended his right hand for me to shake. "How are you, my son?" "I'm good, and you?" "Another day living in God's glory. What happened to you?" he said with a concerned look on his face. "What do you mean?" I asked, perplexed. He took his right hand and pointed at his forehead, and I was reminded of what happened the night before. I fell off the couch last night. Must have hit my head on the table. "Fell off the couch, of course," he said with a smile on his face. I knew you could see right through me that there was far more to the story. He walked into the kitchen, shutting the door behind him, setting his briefcase on the counter. "Would you like some coffee? I just made this pot," I asked. "No, thank you. I don't think I'm going to have any trouble waking up here," he said with a nervous smile on his face. "So Irv and Tom told me what happened. Like I said on the phone, I fear we do not have time to wait for the church." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a large vial of what I assumed was holy water, along with an old, worn Bible. "So you think you can get rid of these demons?" "No, of course not. I cannot get rid of them, but I know someone who can." He slammed the briefcase shut and picked up the Bible before turning around and facing me. "God, this battle is his now. All we can do is ask him to come." "So what do we do?" "We start in the basement, we work our way up. We want to drive them out of the house, give them nowhere to hide." I started to sweat, and my heart began to palpitate. I did not want to go back into that basement and confront whatever was down there. I already saw what it was capable of, even though it was daytime. I still was terrified at the thought. "Do I need to come with you?" I asked in a nervous tone. "Yes, my son, you too must confront the demons. It is the best way to make sure they do not follow you, and for you to let them know that this is your house. I need you to be strong and brave. They will feed off your fear. God will protect you." Yes, I nodded, trying to put a brave face when I was really terrified. It was Tom. He had an excited tone in his voice. You remember when Irv was up against the wall? I will never be able to forget that, I replied. Well, as I panned the camera around, I noticed something in the back right corner, right before he hit the ground. I went back and watched it several times. It was the little girl. She was down there with us. He was speaking so quickly and excitedly, he struggled to catch his breath in between sentences. That's not even the craziest part. You can see her standing there in a dress, facing Irv as he's up against the wall. So she's the demon. Abandoned, perhaps, Father Schaffer interjected. No, this is the craziest part. In her hand, you can clearly see her holding a crucifix. Sam, she's been trying to protect you this whole time. I got choked up and tears began to form in my eyes. This little girl trapped here for eternity in this hell cared enough to try to protect me. While I was running away from the demons, there she stood straight and militant. I had to fight now, not just for me or my family, but the poor little girl who had been fighting for me this whole time. Let's do this, I said with a newfound courage. Do what? Tom asked on the phone. We are going to attempt to perform an exorcism. Father Schaffer replied, That's a terrible idea. They will eat you alive. No, my son. God would not allow that. We have no other option at this point. We either act now or fear what's next. We are far into the oppression stage and you know what comes next. But Father, Tom said, before Father Schaffer hit the red button on his phone, ending the call. We have no room for non-believers or negativity. We are about to go into the largest battle you will ever face in your life. Let me bless you first, and we will get started. Father Schaffer approached me and read a verse from the Bible, but while pouring some holy water onto his hand and drawing a cross on my forehead, I was mixed with so many emotions, fear, rage, anger, sadness. I couldn't even hear the words that he had said as he read aloud from that old worn Bible. It's time, he said, lowering his head and opening the door to the basement. Each step we took down the old wooden stairs played like a battle hymn as the sound echoed off the concrete walls. We made it to the door of the room that Irv had been attacked the day before. Father Schaffer stopped at the door and turned around, placing his hands on my shoulder. Momentarily and bowing his head, he did not say anything, but he really did not need to. The air was thicker than ever before. It was difficult to breathe, and the always cold basin was now scorching hot. Sweat began to run down my forehead. We stepped into the middle of the room, and Father began swinging a vial of holy water, sending it across the room before crashing to the ground. With his Bible in his right hand and his left hand still showering the room with the holy water, he began to read. Princesses gloria mortime, caletese milite, sancte Michael Arcangele defende nos in prolelio et coladante quam nobis adversas principes et potentes adversas min mundi rectores dendebrum haram contra spiritualia nectigradia in sedivos. His voice grew louder and his arms swung harder with every word that he read. Suddenly the only light in the room shattered and the smell of sulfur filled the room. He began to walk slowly along the walls, pausing at the windows to spread the holy water with his index finger across them. He made his way to the back of the room where the door was that was rattling the day before. He stood before the door and reached for the handle while continuing to read. Ubi sedes pitissime petri et cathedra viratrias ad lumise gentiriam castudia est ipi throna porostronde abanmaton trianas et impitrias suae ut percoso pastore et creme disperate davant vedant. Right before his hand reached door swung open violently and exploded out of nowhere, sending wood shrapnel across the basement. Father Schaffer was lying on the ground, his Bible flung halfway across the room, with his holy water still in his hand. I instantly became enraged, running over to Father Schaffer, but instead of checking to see if he was alright, I grabbed the vial of holy water out of his hand. I ran to grab the Bible from the other side of the room. I don't know what had gotten into me, but it was almost as if I was watching myself from me, like the outside, like an outer body experience. "You must leave my home immediately," I shouted, while drenching the room with holy water. "In the name of God, you must leave. You must leave this home and go back to hell where you came from. You must leave me and my family alone, or else I will continue to read from this Bible and unleash the wrath of God upon you. Do you understand?" There were a loud bang that came from the kitchen above us. "So do you understand?" A second bang came immediately after. "Then leave my house right now. Leave this little girl alone and allow her to pass." "Get the hell out of my house. Out of my life." There was another loud bang that came from above. "Need to tell your boys upstairs to get the hell out of here. Or else I will go up there next. Go tell him to make a sound now, if he understands." There was a loud sound that sounded like a bowling ball dropping in the attic that I had become accustomed to hearing. "Good. Now I need you to make 2 loud bangs to confirm you are leaving." After that, there were 2 loud knocks that came from the basement we were standing in. "Now leave," I yelled, while throwing the rest of the holy water in the bottle. Instantly, the entire mood of the place had changed. The room, now a very comfortable room temperature, the air was no longer thick, and even though we were in the basement, it was almost as if it was a glorious light. I went over to check on Father Schaffer, who was now sitting on the floor rubbing his head. I extended my hand to help him up. "You are special," he said, with a smile on his face. "I have heard of people like you, but I have never met one." "What do you mean?" I asked. "A chosen one. Someone chosen by God to trample snakes and serpents. Someone who can call upon angels and strike fear on the unholy. God brought you here for a reason. You bared the cross of living in this home and carried out his work. You are a man of God," he said, with a smile on his face. I paused and took a deep breath, looking around the room, trying to take in what had just happened. My heart was fuller than ever before, as if something angelic had entered into my body. "I need to sit down. was smiling ear to ear. We did it. Finally, my life could get back to normal. Out of nowhere, there was a slight rumbling from the basement. Father Schaffer mid-sipped slammed his coffee cup onto the table and looked at me. We sat in silence as the sound grew louder and louder. The walls began to shake as the noise in the basement grew to what I can only describe as a freight train passing through. The kitchen cabinets began flinging open, spilling cups and plates onto the floor, shattering. As they made contact, all the bedroom doors began to open and slam shut at the same time. As the house began to shake more and more violently, I clenched to the end of the table and my body tensed up. I was sure that I was about to die. Father Schaffer reached into his briefcase and pulled out a crucifix before his eye, closing his eyes and lowering his head while mumbling prayers. The shaking of the home grew so violent that my chair started to slide on the floor below, and I had to brace myself against the table to keep me from falling. This was actually it. All the times I thought I was going to die in this home, and I knew I was going to this time. The house was about to collapse on me, yet I was too terrified to even move through the door. Even though the door was just 50 feet away. Tears streamed from my eyes as I lowered my head and began to say a prayer to myself. Lord, please just protect Jody and Charlie. Please be there for them after I'm no longer able to. Please protect them and do not let this evil follow them. Please, Lord. Suddenly, it all stopped. I slowly opened my eyes, lifted my head upright. Father Schaffer kissed his crucifix and placed it back into his briefcase before closing it. It didn't work, I said, completely defeated. Quite the opposite, my son, he said with a smile on his face. But what was all that? An earthquake? Aftershocks? You asked for a sign of their leaving, and there it was. It's like a grand finale at the 4th of July fireworks display. It's their way of saying you may have won the battle, but not the war. He reached across the table and put his hand on my shoulder. But as long as you stay on this path, you'll never hear from them again. They fear you now, and all you have to do is stay close to God. Welcome into your home and family every day. Stay on a righteous path, and everything will be okay. Yes, Father, I will. Chapter 16. Father Schaffer left a few hours later. He stayed and we talked about life and how I was going to move forward after all of this. My first priority was to reunite with my beautiful wife and daughter. Then I would need to find a new job since I lost my job at the steel mill for missing too much work. I wanted to get on the phone and call Jody, however, the father told me that maybe it would be best if I just went to her, and that's exactly what I did. I made the drive and knocked on the door, only for a strange woman to answer the door. Can I help you? She said. Yes, my name is Sam. I believe that's my wife and Daddy, there she was. My daughter, my beautiful daughter. Her eyes lit up as she ran towards me, arms stretched wide, waiting for a hug. I held her tightly in my arms as tears began to pour out. This time, our reunion was real. Are you back, Daddy? I am. For good? She asked in a somber tone. For good. Promise. I promise, sweetheart. Did you get rid of the mean guys? Yes, they won't be bothering us anymore. Sam, I heard a familiar voice say. I looked up to see Jody standing, dazed in the hallway. this is Lorraine. We go way back, Jody said while smiling in her direction. Since what, 5th grade? Mr. Brown's class. We used to get in so much trouble for talking, she said while laughing. I don't want to be a burden. I will need to sell the home, and I don't know how long that will take. I don't have a job now either. I lost it, I said in shame. Don't worry about it. Jody has non-stop talking about you for the past few weeks. It would be worth it just so that she would shut up, she said while smiling at Jody. Okay, let's do it, I said. I pulled Jody in for a long-awaited and overdue kiss. It had been 4 months since that day. The bank ended up taking the home and auctioning it off to the highest bidder since we could no longer make payments on it. Although we lost our first home, we were all overcome with relief. We may be all living together in a small 12 by 12 bedroom, all sleeping on the floor, but we are together, and that is all that matters. We now attend church every Sunday and say our prayers each night before bed. This may have been a horrible experience that I have not wished on my worst enemy, but at the same time, it made my life even better. It made our marriage stronger. I appreciate life and everything I have that much more. Furthermore, I know that death is not the end, not by a long shot. Jody and I purchased a small trailer in a trailer park. Never in my life did I think I would be living in a small trailer surrounded by hundreds of neighbors in a run-down side of town. It was quite the change in scenery, but we were happy. We are happy. I was sitting on our small porch with Jody watching the sun dip behind the old warped and rusted roofs of the trailers surrounding us. You know, I think we're gonna make it, I said. You think so, huh? Jody asked with a smile on her face. Her beautiful eyes glistened in the reflection of the sun off the window of her neighbor's trailer. Well, not even the devil himself could break us up. If that isn't the biggest problem in our marriage, then I don't know what could ever top it. We smiled as we got lost in each other's eyes. I leaned in for a kiss right as my phone began to ring. I picked up my phone and didn't recognize the number, so I sat it back down on the table and leaned back in for a kiss. Who was it? Jody asked. I have no idea, I replied. Well, aren't you going to answer it? If it's important to leave a message, I said, right before kissing her lips. Well, look there, Jody said as my phone beeped to let me know I received voicemail. All I know is that this better not be work on my day off. I flipped open the phone and typed in my password to my voicemail. Yeah, Sam, this is Tom. Well, he's back. I need your help. I need to know what you did to get rid of him. He's back, and I cannot sleep. Stuff is being thrown everywhere. My cat is dead. My girlfriend left me because she thinks I'm crazy. He began to sob on the phone. Please, I need your help. I know I wasn't much help to you, but I know you can help me. I know you can. Please, call me back. I closed the phone and set it down on the table. I must have had a look on my face because Jody knew something was amiss. Babe, what's wrong? She asked while placing her hand on my shoulder. Nothing. I'm going to have to be gone for a couple of days. Work called. They had to send me to another site to help get it started. I said while trying to put a smile on. I've never lied to Jody and I hated the feeling, but I could never tell her what actually the call was. You've been working enough hours. Can't you just tell them that you have a wife and a kid and can't go? Can't you just send someone else? I turned towards her and placed her hands between mine. I'm sorry, but I have to go. They need me. Well, when do you have to leave? I'll be leaving in an hour. I have to go back. But why such short notice? Doesn't seem fair. I know, baby, it isn't fair. Neither is all the other stuff we had gone through. We just had to keep our heads held high and count our blessings, I said, reassuring her before kissing her forehead. Okay, I'll be back. But you better hurry back, and I don't have to be here all alone. I will, I promise. I packed my duffel bag and threw it into my beat-up old truck. I sold our cars in order to pay for this trailer. Now I have an old, worn-out, rusted Ford pickup. It isn't the most beautiful of cars, but she runs. I hopped in the driver's seat and closed the door. Jody and Charlie were standing on the porch waving with sad looks on their faces. Don't worry, I will be back as soon as I can. I turned the truck ignition, and for the first time since I purchased this truck, I turned the truck ignition, and for the first time since I purchased this truck, it started first try. So, don't worry, I will be back as soon as I can. I turned the ignition, and for the first time since I purchased this truck, it started for the first time. I reached my hand out of the window to wave goodbye. You guys be good. Charlie, take care of Mommy, and for me, I love you both. I rolled up the window and began to drive away, just when I thought I was out of this. Just when I thought this was all in my past. Here we are again. The only difference is that this time, I am the one chasing the demons, not